The events began with a cold winter scene where heavy snow blanketed an old countryside house. The sound of the wind was clear and sharp, cutting through the still air. Though the house appeared silent and peaceful, a voice soon broke the quiet, questioning a certain rumor. Inside, two people held a hushed conversation about a tale spreading across the land, one that spoke of a madman wreaking havoc and destruction on battlefields. One of them curiously asked about this so-called madman. The first speaker described him as a mercenary whose eyes held no attachment to life. He would appear suddenly in the midst of war, then vanish without a trace, only to resurface in another bloody conflict. The other listener expressed amazement, remarking that a mercenary with no will to live was indeed strange. Their talk continued, revealing that this mysterious fighter often muttered a peculiar phrase, "I've survived again." It seemed as though he fought for something deeply personal rather than for money or fame, particularly when the empire was involved. This raised grave questions about his true identity. According to the rumors, it eventually became known that this man was once a prince of a fallen kingdom. Elsewhere, in a desolate, snow-covered land, the same mercenary was seen wandering aimlessly through the cold, searching for a place to die, while distant soldiers watched him in silence. Yet, the only answer he found to his suffering was self-destruction. His true identity was revealed. This mercenary was Yuri Briol, the third prince of the kingdom of Briol, a man who had destroyed both his name and his nation with his own hands. 10 years earlier, in a lively casino called Double X, the atmosphere had been vibrant and full of energy. The young third prince, Yuri Briol, then only 15, played his games with confidence and enthusiasm, boasting that luck was on his side that day. The royal mage, Hernando, watched in surprise at Yuri's uncanny ability to win every round and teased that Yuri was always short on money. Yuri responded cheerfully that his success was nothing but dumb luck and insisted that they should go for another round. With great excitement, Yuri demanded that the bets be doubled, confident in his luck and skill. However, Hernando reminded him that it was time to leave, as they had an important appointment they could not afford to miss. Just as they prepared to depart, a group of men confronted them, accusing Yuri of cheating and swindling money through deceit. The men roughly grabbed him, shouting that he was a fraud. Yuri grew furious and demanded to know if they had any idea who they were accusing. The men mocked him, laughing at his claim of noble birth, and vowed they would not go easy on him, even if he truly was a prince. Their insults worsened as they ridiculed his royal family's strained relations with the empire, calling them arrogant and self-righteous. In a fit of rage, Yuri overturned the table, sending cards and coins scattering across the floor. The crowd froze in shock, unsure of what would happen next. Yuri stepped over the broken glass, his voice trembling with anger, as he called the men nothing but trash from the back alleys. With cold authority, he declared his name, Yuri Briol, the third prince of Briol. He warned them that from that moment on, their lives would be reshaped by his hands. The men stared in horror as Yuri advanced with a terrifying smile, assuring them that this would be their rebirth. One of them screamed in fear, confirming the panic that had overtaken the room. The scene then shifted. Yuri was later seen speaking to someone as though trying to justify his earlier actions. It was revealed that this was during a late-night meeting. The imperial princess, Katrina Ivana Branzine, had arrived late to an emergency gathering called by her father. Though she had sent word explaining her delay, she entered the room composed and dignified, asking her interlocutor to overlook the incident just this once. Katrina spoke with quiet sorrow, admitting that things had not been easy for her either. She hoped that he could understand her difficult position. After his father's recent departure, Yuri explained that he had no choice but to move cautiously with every step he took. He confessed that even sharing such information with her was dangerous. Katrina's expression turned cold and sarcastic as she asked if she had now become a stranger to him. Yuri tried to explain, but she interrupted with anger and hurt, questioning whether he truly trusted her. She demanded to know why he had given her something so meaningful if he did not trust her, pointing to the blue pendant she threw to the ground. She turned and walked away, saying that he was not to contact her again unless she initiated it. Yuri called after her, pleading for her to wait just one more second, but she ignored him. Holding the pendant in his trembling hand, Yuri stood there, torn between confusion and despair, realizing how difficult it would be to escape this tangled situation. From the shadows, a mysterious figure watched and smiled maliciously, as if signaling that a new danger was about to unfold. full. From that day forward, the fragile relations between the kingdom of Briol and the empire began to crumble. What started as minor provocations escalated rapidly into uncontrollable conflict, leading to a full-scale war. Yuri was struck with disbelief when cries of an imminent invasion echoed through the city. The empire's army swept across Briol, flames devouring everything in sight as chaos consumed the streets. Amid the turmoil, Yuri desperately led civilians out of the palace, urging them to flee. The fires grew higher, marking the start of a devastating war. Years passed. Countless sacrifices were made, but the war showed no signs of ending. On one battlefield, a soldier named Joshua was gravely wounded. The others tried to pull Prince Yuri to safety, but Yuri frantically asked about reinforcements led by Fiore Briol, known as the mightiest warrior in the kingdom. However, Fiore was nowhere to be found. Without Fiore's presence, the Empire's forces began to gain the upper hand. At first, Yuri refused to believe it was deliberate, but after endless battles and near-death experiences, he came to a painful realization. Princess Katrina, the woman he had trusted completely, had betrayed him. His father's absence during the invasion had aligned too perfectly with the Empire's timing. He wished it were a mere illusion, but the reply he received to his desperate letter confirmed his fears. The note contained only 2 words: "I'm sorry." As word spread that Prince Yuri was on the battlefield, the Empire's soldiers realized that his death would signal Briol's complete downfall. Yuri fought relentlessly, but he knew the end was inevitable. The fighting intensified, with Yuri enduring one brutal strike after another. Despite being battered and exhausted, he refused to fall. Surrounded by enemies, he continued to fight, bloodied and trembling, his sword barely steady in his hand. The Imperial soldiers closed in, their faces hard with determination. Yuri stood in despair, his eyes filled with tears as he faced his approaching death. Then, a powerful blow struck him, sending him collapsing to the ground. Blood spilled across the frozen earth as hopelessness overwhelmed him. Suddenly, one of his soldiers leapt forward, shielding him from a fatal attack and sacrificing his own life. Yuri froze in shock as the soldier fell. His name was Laurent, his loyal companion. With his dying breath, Laurent begged the prince to live on, deepening Yuri's anguish as he cried out his name in despair. The remaining soldiers fought desperately to buy Yuri time to escape, shouting that his fall would mean the end of Briol itself. Yuri finally fled, hearing the enemy's furious shouts behind him. The Imperial troops soon reached a nearby area, searching frantically and ordering their men to sweep every corner, hiding among old crates in an abandoned house. Yuri watched their movements through a crack in the wall. He knew he could not hide forever and resolved to break through the siege, no matter the cost. His thoughts drifted to his father, and he realized with horror that if his father had not returned by now, the Empire must have already taken his life. Before he could think further, he sensed someone approaching. The door burst open, revealing a towering Imperial soldier. The situation had taken a dire turn. Yuri felt crushed by despair as he stared at the soldier closing in, realizing that if he died here, the future of the kingdom of Briol would perish with him. In silent desperation, he prayed that someone, anyone, might save him from this hopeless fate. Yuri dropped to his knees, silently repeating to himself that if he died now, the resistance would end entirely. Pain filled his heart as he wondered what would become of the brave knights who had sacrificed their lives for his sake. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded for survival, for mercy, yet in the end, he could utter nothing but a broken apology. His voice trembled with sorrow and despair as he realized that he could no longer change anything. The man who had appeared before Prince Yuri spoke with cold determination, telling him that words were useless now and that the Empire would one day pay for its crimes. He urged Yuri to leave immediately, warning that Imperial soldiers were already closing in. Yuri ran through the dark forest, gasping for breath in desperation as he tried to escape his pursuers. The man's words echoed in his mind, urging him to live at any cost, to rebuild the kingdom of Briol, and to avenge his fallen comrades. But the ideals Yuri had once believed in now seemed like nothing more than youthful illusions, shattered by the harsh reality of war and loss. Under the heavy rain, Yuri trudged forward, haunted by memories of the countless lives lost and the rivers of blood spilled. He wondered in anguish what purpose any of it had served. As the rain poured down endlessly, he came to a painful realization that all along he had been fighting only to punish himself. He wished that one day someone would finally appear to kill him and put an end to his suffering. It became known that Yuri was merely searching for a place to die. Back in the present, a voice spoke to him in an accusing tone, pointing out that he always threw himself into the most dangerous fronts and hopeless battles. The voice mocked him, claiming that while he said it was for peace, the only true result had been his own destruction, and that his selfishness had persisted until the very end. The unseen speaker continued his verbal assault, saying that even death was too good for him, and demanding that he finally die. He called him by his full title, the third Prince of Briol, Yuri Briol. Yuri froze in shock. Anyone who knew his past should have been long dead. The thought struck him that everything that had happened was indeed his own fault. The pursuer's voice echoed again, affirming that all of it was because of Yuri's own mistakes. Then the figure of the mysterious warrior became visible. His expression burned with rage as he shouted that Yuri was the only one responsible for all the tragedies that had occurred. In sudden realization, Yuri muttered a name, Laurent, suspecting that the voice condemning him truly belonged to his fallen comrade. The accusing voice grew harsher, declaring that the kingdom of Briol had collapsed under the Empire's deceptions, that the noble Blandry family's loyalty had been wasted, and that everything had shattered in an instant. The warrior charged toward Yuri in a fury, calling him the one who should have died, yet had returned like a ghost to face judgment for his unforgivable sins. He attacked Yuri ferociously, as if to make him pay for every wrong of the past. In that moment, Yuri thought death might finally bring him peace, but even then, guilt continued to haunt him. In the depths of his grief and reflection, Yuri realized that the blood of the Briol lineage would never abandon its honor, even if it meant dying for it. Suddenly, Yuri woke from his nightmare, startled by someone screaming his name. The voice continued to echo, Yuri Briol, pulling him completely awake. When he opened his eyes with great difficulty, he saw before him a strong man of noble bearing, who asked with concern if he was all right, since he had remained unconscious for 3 days. With shock and sorrow, Yuri whispered, wondering if the man before him was truly his father, whom he had long believed dead. The thought sent tremors through his heart. Was this truly hell? Had his father also died? But his father responded calmly with a hint of sarcasm, asking if Yuri really believed they had both ended up in hell. Yuri gave a faint, bitter smile and remarked that for a man who had always spoken of honor, his father had certainly lived a life full of events. His father frowned at Yuri's sarcasm and lightly struck him in mock irritation, scolding him for his meaningless words. Yuri playfully countered, teasing that his father should repent for his bad habits while there was still time. As they talked, a green leaf drifted through the window, and the atmosphere turned strangely calm. Yuri sensed something odd about this serenity, though he couldn't explain it. Looking out the window, he saw maids crossing the courtyard, everything appearing normal, perhaps too normal. He began to question what was happening. There were no sinners, no flames of torment, no demons punishing the damned. So where exactly was he? Suddenly, a worried voice called to him, snapping him back to reality. His father and 2 others stood nearby, their faces filled with concern. His vision began to blur again, and before he could speak, he felt himself slipping back into unconsciousness, hearing only their anxious cries calling his name. At that moment, Yuri was 13 years old, trapped in a deep sleep or coma. He wondered whether this was a dream or whether his entire life had flashed before his eyes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wake up or change anything. The world around him remained unaltered. Events he had long forgotten replayed exactly as before, leaving him no choice but to accept what was happening. Then, realization dawned on him. He had truly returned to the past, to the spring of his 13th year. The next morning, servants opened the curtains, calling for Yuri to wake up, reminding him that it was time for sword training. Yuri jumped out of bed in panic, demanding his clothes before remembering that he needed to wash his face first. The maid, Ina, gently calmed him, asking him to slow down and promising to help him wash before asking him to sit. At that moment, Yuri recalled a painful memory of seeing Ina dead in his past life, which filled him with sorrow and regret. He fell silent, lost in grief as the memories returned. Then he suddenly called her name. Ina quickly responded, "Yes, Your Highness?" Yuri startled her by requesting that she slap him 3 times, hard. Ina nervously asked whether he was ordering her to commit treason, but Yuri replied playfully that it wasn't treason if it was a direct order from him. He assured her that he was completely serious and that he always kept his promises. The day in the palace began normally. The air was pleasant, and the weather outside was bright and peaceful. Later during sword training, Yuri felt a sharp sting from Ina's surprisingly strong slaps. Astonished by her strength, something he hadn't remembered so clearly before, he noticed soldiers passing by, none of whom seemed to care about the bruise on his cheek. Even his instructor, Bernard, ignored it entirely when training began. Yuri felt frustrated as Bernard silently sparred with him, offering no corrections or advice. As they dueled, Yuri wondered when Bernard had stopped teaching and resorted only to sparring. He remembered visiting Bernard's office once, when the man had sadly told His Highness that Yuri possessed great natural talent, yet wasted it through idleness. Bernard had said that if Yuri were only a bit more diligent, he could have become a blessing to the entire kingdom of Briol. Yuri remembered that those words had been the turning point of his rebellion. Instead of motivating him, they had made him lazier and more defiant. Eventually, Bernard had given up on instructing him and limited their sessions to silent sparring. Yuri now felt deep regret for having disappointed his mentor. In the middle of training, he suddenly called Bernard's name and declared firmly that from now on, he wanted proper instruction. No leniency, no sugarcoating. He vowed that as Yuri Briol, he would take his training seriously from this moment onward. Bernard was taken aback by Yuri's sudden determination, but accepted it, saying that from this day forward, the training would be real. He took his wooden sword, preparing himself with focus and resolve. Then, with firm authority, he announced that the time for true training had come. The session began immediately. Bernard attacked with full force, leaving Yuri struggling to keep up. Yuri begged him to slow down, but Bernard refused, showing no mercy. Forced to fight seriously, Yuri steadied his stance and defended with all his strength. Bernard's strikes were powerful and precise, revealing his mastery and discipline, which left Yuri in awe. By the end of the session, Yuri collapsed in exhaustion, but felt a sense of fulfillment. He finally understood what true training under Bernard meant, and believed that his skills would soon improve. He raised his hand toward the sky, hoping that his effort would bear fruit. Bernard stood silently, watching in astonishment, wondering when the young prince had matured so much. Suddenly, Ina rushed in urgently, calling out to Yuri and telling him that the king was looking for him. Yuri was startled, wondering why the king had summoned him so suddenly. Bernard also appeared surprised by the urgent call. Ina quickly explained that Count Johannes and his son had arrived at the palace, causing Yuri to freeze in shock. At that moment, he remembered that Count Johannes's son was Goth Barkfar, the man who had betrayed the kingdom in Yuri's previous life and led to its fall. The memory of Goth's treacherous face filled Yuri with burning anger. He called out to Ina in a firm voice, and when she responded with concern, he asked where Goth was. Later, at a formal banquet, the royal family gathered with Count Johannes and his son. Yuri sat opposite the guests, his expression calm but severe. The attendees noticed a significant change in him and whispered among themselves, wondering about the reason behind it. Count Johannes observed Yuri's improved appearance and remarked on how much stronger and healthier he looked. The king joked that Yuri must have found something special to make such progress. The king continued, saying that the count's son was quite intelligent, to which the count modestly replied that he still had much to learn. Goth Barkfar turned toward the second prince with admiration, but then his eyes met Yuri's piercing gaze. Yuri's sharp glare froze him in place, startling him with its intensity, the look of a man who remembered every sin of the past. The second prince leaned toward Yuri and whispered with curiosity, asking if something had happened between him and Goth. Yuri responded seriously and confidently that Goth had once betrayed him. The second prince was taken aback by Yuri's clear answer, and Yuri reaffirmed that he could never forgive someone who had stabbed him in the back. Goth, noticing Yuri's piercing stare, began to feel irritated and confused, unaware of the reason behind it. His expression revealed rising tension as Yuri's presence provoked him. Deep down, Yuri decided he would not allow Goth to continue acting with such arrogance and resolved to teach him a lesson. He understood clearly that in this new life, neither Goth nor any knight could behave in a way unworthy of the kingdom of Briol. Yuri wondered whether Goth's past betrayal had originated from envy and resentment excitement that began. During this very stage, turning directly to Goth, Yuri mockingly asked if he was truly skilled with the sword as rumors claim. Goth hesitated and cautiously admitted that he knew a little about swordsmanship, confused by the sudden and strange question. Yuri bluntly told him that the kingdom had no use for knights with such narrow thinking. Goth nervously pointed out that he wasn't even a knight yet, to which Yuri firmly reminded him that he was expected to become a knight serving the kingdom in the future. Goth carefully agreed, acknowledging it as true. Without warning, Yuri suddenly challenged Goth to a duel, rushing at him with a shout. Goth was startled, yelling in a mix of anger and confusion, accusing Yuri of cowardice for attacking him so suddenly. But Yuri pressed the assault relentlessly, demonstrating skills Goth had never expected, landing a powerful blow that clearly hurt him. Goth screamed, begging Yuri to stop, invoking knightly honor and proper combat rules. Yet Yuri ignored him, deliberately dropping his sword to the ground, leaving Goth stunned and confused. Unarmed, Yuri lunged at Goth and struck him with a forceful physical blow, sending him flying through the air before he crashed painfully to the ground. Goth screamed in agony as he hit the floor. Yuri stood before him, casting a stern gaze, remembering how Goth had betrayed the kingdom and his father in their previous life by selling his father's reputation to the Empire in exchange for information. Yuri reminded Goth that his father was a great count and a respected knight, asking what he thought had earned him such a title and status. Goth looked confused, and Yuri waited for a clear answer. Extremely puzzled, Goth remained silent, prompting Yuri to ask again. He wondered sarcastically whether Goth might not want to repeat past mistakes, but this time, Yuri resolved to force him to face reality. He asked once more why Goth's father held such power and status. Goth admitted he didn't fully understand the question. Yuri decided then and there that no knight in the kingdom of Bryol, including himself, would misunderstand the meaning of their position and responsibility. He repeated the question seriously, urging Goth to see the truth clearly, extending his hand for a handshake and telling him to consider his words carefully. After the brief exchange, Goth left, and Yuri watched him walk away, contemplating the potential changes that lay ahead. The second prince approached, clearly curious, asking whether Yuri was genuinely skilled in combat or if it had all been a show. Yuri defiantly asked if he truly thought he would lose. The second prince replied sarcastically that he had indeed thought so. Surprised, Yuri asked if that was really how his older brother saw him. The second prince laughed, declaring that Yuri was the kingdom's biggest troublemaker and gambler, which slightly annoyed Yuri. Yuri firmly declared that he would no longer repeat his past self's mistakes and told his older brother that he should also stop causing trouble. The second prince stared at him in genuine surprise, wondering whether Yuri had gone completely mad or was genuinely beginning to change. After long and intense training, Yuri collapsed to the ground, exhausted, declaring that training was finally over. Bernard stepped forward, officially announcing the end of the day's exercises and praising Yuri's impressive efforts. He then asked if Yuri was ready to learn the mana style, surprising him and sparking curiosity about what was to come. Yuri eagerly inquired whether Bernard would teach him his personal style, but Bernard explained that it wasn't strong enough for a prince like him. Instead, Bernard recommended the Brillouin style, a powerful and effective sword technique. Yuri recalled that in his previous life, he had already mastered Brillouin and reached an advanced level as a mercenary, yet he felt the need for something beyond that in this new life. Deep in thought, Yuri considered other options, determined to surpass his former self and avoid repeating past mistakes. Bernard noticed his contemplative mood and asked whether he was considering a completely different style. Yuri requested Bernard to recommend someone among the royal guards who possessed exceptional talent and could teach him a new approach. Bernard paused, then confidently named a guard called Gerard, a man with rare and exceptional skill. Yuri asked about Gerard, a name he vaguely remembered from his previous life. Suddenly, he recalled encountering Gerard during the war, noting that his skills had seemed weak and average. Still, Yuri was surprised that Gerard had survived countless battles despite his limited abilities, and began to wonder why. He remembered a battlefield scene where Gerard had knelt, scolding himself for failing to properly cultivate his talent. Amid the blazing fires of war, Yuri realized that both he and Gerard had been helpless, possessing only rusty skills that could not withstand the chaos of battle. Shaking off those bitter memories, Yuri resolved not to repeat the same mistakes in this life. Confident and determined, he decided he had to awaken Gerard from his laziness and guide him back to the right path. Meanwhile, Gerard stood in the training yard, looking bored and unmotivated as he held his sword, performing the motions as if fulfilling a chore without any passion. Yuri observed him from afar with a confident smile, deciding that the time had come to ignite Gerard's drive and pull him out of apathy. The sunset sky was clear and the palace atmosphere was calm as Yuri walked firmly toward the training grounds. Sir Rosso glanced in surprise at the movement, seemingly expecting someone at that hour. Yuri entered with a smile and waved kindly at Sir Rosso, leaving him momentarily stunned by the prince's late visit. Yuri calmly explained that he had come to see how training was progressing. Sir Rosso smiled, assuring him that everyone was doing their best. Watching the soldiers train with great enthusiasm, Yuri noted that they seemed unusually motivated these days. He asked about Gerard's whereabouts, and Sir Rosso pointed to the far side of the training yard. Seeing Gerard train indifferently, Yuri confirmed Bernard's assessment of his laziness and carelessness. He realized the importance of true training, which should push a person beyond their limits. Gerard, however, was doing only enough to get by, lacking any ambition. Disappointed by Gerard's regression due to neglect, Yuri asked Sir Rosso to bring a wooden sword, deciding to spar himself. When asked whom he intended to duel, Yuri pointed with a sarcastic smile toward Gerard, announcing that he had chosen to spar with the lazy recruit. The two faced each other in the training yard as everyone watched, anticipating the outcome of this unexpected match. Some soldiers began cheering for the new recruit. Yuri stood confidently before Gerard, loudly remarking that he had heard Gerard was extremely talented and asked him to show what kind of knight he truly was. Smiling playfully and challengingly, Yuri told Gerard not to disappoint him in this match. Gerard hesitated briefly, but eventually accepted the prince's challenge, nervously replying that he would do it. Yuri immediately launched himself at Gerard with great speed, attacking with full force and warning him not to disappoint. Gerard was shocked by the strength of Yuri's swift assault, and his expression revealed astonishment at the prince's power. The two exchanged powerful blows with impressive speed, each strike clashing with force, sparks flying from the intensity of the duel. The soldiers noticed Gerard's movements were clean and precise, which made them cheer even louder for Yuri. Gerard realized that Yuri was fighting exceptionally well, but soon felt something odd and unsettling about the duel. As the two continued, exchanging focused strikes, Gerard began to sense that something was off about Yuri's fighting rhythm. He finally noticed that the distance Yuri left between strikes was unnaturally consistent, making him uneasy. At that moment, Yuri realized he had full control over the duel's pace and was already planning his next move. He felt a quiet satisfaction and confidence in having set the tempo of the fight, forcing Gerard to follow his lead. Recognizing that the match was starting to feel more like a performance than a serious duel, Yuri decided to change the pace. Suddenly, with a challenging smile, he declared that it was time to fight seriously. Gerard struggled to block Yuri's next strike, overwhelmed by the prince's sudden speed and power. The duel continued with fast, forceful blows, Yuri displaying reaction speeds and precision reminiscent of a beast. Gerard kept defending himself, realizing that Prince Yuri had completely surpassed him. Anger rose within Gerard as he recognized that he had initially intended to take the duel lightly, but now he was forced to exert all his effort. Gerard managed to land a strong blow on Yuri, causing him pain, and Yuri realized the fight would not be as easy as expected. He struggled to withstand Gerard's consecutive strikes and felt the challenge of facing a trained knight like Gerard. Suddenly, Yuri remembered that Gerard had been a professional and experienced knight in his previous life. Even with all his memories and skills, defeating him would not be easy. Yuri launched a final, desperate attack, putting all his strength into landing a successful strike. Gerard was surprised by the boldness of the move. Indeed, Yuri managed to land a strong, unexpected blow on Gerard, pushing him back slightly. The result filled him with intense excitement. Yuri grinned with enthusiasm, raising his sword high and exclaiming joyfully that this was exactly what he had hoped for. The soldiers were stunned that Prince Yuri had hit Gerard, praising him with awe and admiration. Yuri asked slyly if Gerard had been going easy on him, but Gerard, with a firm look, insisted he wasn't holding back. Despite pressing the attack earlier, failure, Gerard now felt strangely cornered. Yuri launched a powerful strike, narrowly missing Gerard, leaving him slightly frustrated. Smiling, Yuri remarked that the last strike had come very close. Gerard stood in the middle of the yard, clearly angered and irritated by the exhausting duel. Soldiers shouted in protest at Gerard's strange behavior, questioning whether he had lost his mind. Suddenly, Gerard revealed a sword enveloped in energy, a monoblade, which horrified everyone present. The soldiers screamed, urging him to regain his senses as he was fighting the third prince. Gerard froze, realizing what he had done, while strands of Yuri's hair fell to the ground. He had nearly been struck by Gerard's deadly attack. Yuri stood stunned for a moment, and the training yard fell into a deafening silence. Gerard screamed in panic and regret, calling out to the prince as if realizing the gravity of his action. Sarasso yelled in fury at Gerard, calling him insane, while others rushed toward Yuri to check on him. Yuri smiled calmly despite the injury, assuring everyone he was fine. He asked Gerard sarcastically if this was his first duel. Even as soldiers nervously pointed out his injury, ignoring the pain, Yuri demanded that Gerard pick up his sword again so they could continue, insisting there was no reason to stop. He charged forward with great force, affirming that the duel should not be halted. They resumed their clash, striking with immense power, sparks flying and tension filling the yard. Gerard realized the third prince was completely different from him, willing to push beyond his limits. Fear and amazement grew in Gerard as he understood that Yuri was surpassing his own physical capacity. Yuri continued advancing, determined, leaving everyone in the arena astounded. Gerard struggled to block his blows, barely defending against the overwhelming strength. Sparks flew dangerously as their swords clashed, and Yuri pushed himself without hesitation to the brink of collapse. The scene ended with both standing face to face, fully aware of each other's seriousness and relentless drive. While the spectators remained in stunned silence, Gerard felt his blood boiling with excitement and adrenaline, a sensation he had never experienced before. Though he had faced stronger opponents in the past, the tension and thrill he felt facing Yuri were unlike anything else. They exchanged determined blows, and Yuri's eyes burned with a fierce resolve Gerard had never seen. Gerard wondered how someone so young could awaken such emotions within him. Yuri continued his aggressive assault, launching another strong attack that forced Gerard to retreat, realizing he could not hold back any longer. Gerard shouted in frustration, gripping his sword tightly, and released a fierce strike, channeling mana energy to end the duel. The force shattered his sword, violently clashing with Yuri's blade. Yuri's sword fell to the ground, yet he smiled calmly, satisfied, declaring that it was over. Gerard stood panting, clearly surprised by what had just occurred. Yuri extended his hand to Gerard, telling him calmly that he had learned something new from him. Gerard shook it, confused but respectful, admitting that Yuri had fought exceptionally well. Internally, Gerard felt deep admiration for Yuri's fighting spirit and determination, marveling at how someone so young could possess such unwavering resolve. He suddenly realized he was still holding Yuri's hand. Yuri jokingly asked what he was doing, causing Gerard to apologize quickly and let go. Embarrassed, Gerard left the area quickly. The soldiers whispered that the prince looked completely exhausted. Yuri collapsed to the ground, breathing deeply and sighing, finally feeling relaxed and at peace. Opening his eyes with slight surprise, he realized how worn out he had become. Soldiers cheered and praised him for the skill he had shown. Sarasso sensed someone nearby and turned to see the commander of the royal guard, Sand, who had just arrived. Soldiers asked when he got there, and he replied simply that he had just arrived. Yuri remained lying on the ground, exhausted, as Commander Sand observed silently, appearing deep in thought. A few days later, the atmosphere in the royal palace was bright and calm. Gerard walked quietly through the palace garden alone, seemingly lost in thought. Suddenly, he heard someone ask if he had finished his shift. The third prince, Yuri, leaned confidently against a pillar, observing him. Surprised, Gerard called out. Seeing Yuri in the same place, Yuri gave a mysterious smile, exuding his usual confidence as if planning something, and told Gerard to follow him. He explained there was a place they had to go, but Gerard hesitated, saying he needed to train first. Yuri stopped and turned jokingly toward him, asking if his mindset had improved after their last last duel and sarcastically reminded him that it was thanks to him, so he now owed him a favor. Gerard sighed lightly and calmly replied, "I understand." Yuri observed him, noting that his body had grown slightly stronger from their previous training. Though still insufficient, it was enough for now. Gerard began to follow Yuri, asking curiously where they were headed. Yuri responded cheerfully, telling him to follow quietly and ask no more questions. He shouted, catching the attention of a third person who stood at a distance and turned upon hearing his voice. The royal mage, Hernando, approached Yuri, surprised as he clearly heard his name being called, and asked what the prince wanted. Yuri directly told him that he needed his help to go somewhere. Hernando responded apologetically, explaining that he had somewhere else to be at the moment and appeared somewhat hesitant. Yuri gave a sly smile and reminded him that he was ready to repay his gambling debts, leaving Hernando utterly shocked. Hernando turned to Yuri with a serious expression, asking if he was truly serious about that. Yuri replied with a confident smile, confirming that he was indeed serious, and even added that he could repay the debt Hernando owed from last time. Yuri looked at Hernando sarcastically and asked if he had ever lied to him before. Hernando smirked, admitting he had never seen Yuri lie, at least not outside the gambling hall. Yuri smiled with exaggerated ease, affirming Hernando's statement and feeling slightly embarrassed by the remark. Internally, he began to worry slightly about whether his reputation was really that bad, but he didn't show it outwardly. After reaffirming his commitment to repaying Hernando's debts, he asked him to join the upcoming trip without hesitation. Hernando finally smiled and theatrically agreed, saying that if that was the case, Yuri would need to sign a contract first, and dramatically pulled out the document. Yuri looked at him coldly, clearly irritated, wondering whether his status as the third prince had truly fallen so low that Hernando would bargain this way. Yuri then turned to Gerard and asked him to be the guarantor for the agreement, leaving Gerard stunned and shouting in surprise. Yuri calmly explained that he wanted Gerard to be a witness and guarantor, forcing him to agree despite his confusion. Hernando finally agreed with joy, inviting Yuri to accompany him so they could begin their journey without delay. As the three prepared to set off, Gerard asked again, insistently, where they were going, especially since the prince had brought both a knight and a mage. Yuri paused for a moment, appearing unusually serious and calm, and announced that they were heading to Sword Mountain. Both Hernando and Gerard stared at him in wide-eyed surprise. Yuri gave a small, confident smile, quietly affirming to himself that from now on, things would be very different, and that the future held many changes. He spoke with enthusiasm and defiance, declaring their destination as looting the ancestors' dungeon, clearly hinting at an upcoming dangerous adventure. The trio descended into a hidden passage beneath the palace, prompting Gerard to express surprise, remarking he had no idea such a path existed. Curiously and anxiously, Gerard asked what awaited them at the end of the dark cave. Yuri calmly and confidently replied that the path led to the Mountain of Swords. Gerard asked in astonishment if he meant the legendary Mountain of Swords connected to their ancestor, and Yuri confirmed with a decisive yes. Meanwhile, Yuri recalled his previous life when the Empire had taken control of the kingdom of Bryol, discovering a hidden dungeon inside the Mountain of Swords. Hidden archaeological remains belonging to the first ancestor of the Bryol family were uncovered, creating a huge sensation as the treasures and artifacts were incredibly valuable. This path had previously only been used as a secret escape route, allowing the ancestors' heritage and precious swords to fall into the hands of the Empire without being used by anyone from Bryol. Yuri remembered his painful past, but decided that in this life he would not retreat or run away. Instead, he would move forward with all his strength and determination. Resolutely, he decided to personally uncover his ancestors' legacy within the Mountain of Swords and reclaim it for his kingdom with complete confidence. The three finally arrived at a secret exit leading directly into a dense forest of stunning natural beauty. Yuri cautiously peered out first, followed carefully by Gerard and Hernando. After exiting the tunnel, Hernando remarked that the path was supposed to lead directly to the Mountain of Swords and questioned how the prince had acquired the key to the secret door, considering it was a rare artifact. Yuri silently recalled finding the key hidden in the corner of the study, exactly as in his previous life. Back then, he hadn't known how to use it properly and had paid a heavy price for that ignorance. He sharply told Hernando Hernando it was none of his business. While walking, Hernando was suddenly injured by sharp leaves, exclaiming in pain. Yuri advised him to be more cautious, explaining that the plants here had sharp leaves and told him to stay close to avoid further injury. Yuri led cautiously while Hernando silently watched from behind. Hernando suddenly turned to Gerard. Gerard responded, curious as to why. In a lowered voice, Hernando asked if the prince had consumed something unusual recently, expressing surprise at Yuri's recent behavior. At that moment, Yuri sharply called out to both of them, urging them to hurry. Hernando smiled, noting that despite everything, the prince's temperament hadn't changed. Yuri suddenly stopped and ordered them both to halt as he sensed imminent danger. Ahead of them, a group of huge dire wolves moved in large packs. Yuri explained that the wolves moved in groups, making it impossible to predict their exact number. Hernando expressed amazement, asking how he knew this, and Yuri calmly replied that he had read it in a book. Hernando was shocked, incredulously asking, "Because Yuri read a book?" Yuri ignored his astonishment and ordered them to move quietly and quickly, as the wolves had not yet noticed them. Hernando moved hesitantly, accidentally stepping on and breaking a tree branch. He smiled awkwardly and laughed nervously. Suddenly, a huge wolf leaped toward him from behind. Gerard shouted in alarm. The wolf charged with tremendous force, but Gerard reacted quickly, using his sword to confront it and slam it to the ground, eliminating the immediate threat. Yuri expressed great admiration for Gerard's swift reaction and praised him for using monostyle techniques wisely, though he warned that the danger was not over yet. Terrifying eyes suddenly appeared in the darkness, and Yuri declared that their actions had drawn the attention of the alpha wolf, the leader of the pack. The enormous wolf raised its head and howled loudly, summoning the other wolves. The three found themselves completely surrounded. Gerard drew his sword, channeling a blue mana aura, and instructed Yuri and Hernando to stay close. The wolves approached aggressively, growling fiercely. Two wolves leaped at Gerard from the front, but he skillfully blocked and repelled them using his sword's magical energy. Hernando was impressed, commenting that Gerard's skills were exactly what one would expect from a royal guard of Briol, and Yuri agreed. However, Yuri noted that while Gerard's skills were impressive, they were still not enough to completely resolve the situation. Gerard began showing fatigue, his body clearly strained. Yuri calmly asked him to step back, then called Hernando's name. Hernando responded immediately, and Yuri reminded him of the king's trust, and that now was the time to prove it. Hernando smiled confidently and unleashed his magical energy, declaring that he would now use full combat magic. Gerard, stunned, asked what he meant. Hernando released a powerful blast of fire magic, causing a massive explosion beneath the wolves attacking Gerard. The fire, combined with Gerard's sword strike, blasted the wolves away, allowing him to leap back safely. The fiery assault triggered a second explosion, helping all three escape the dangerous predicament. Later, as the sun began to set, the trio finally arrived at their destination. Yuri expressed surprise that they hadn't encountered any monsters besides wolves. Gerard agreed that the battles had delayed them, but felt relieved to have reached the goal. The three stood atop Sword Mountain, and Yuri declared that this was indeed the summit. Gerard questioned whether this was the right place, noting the lack of visible ruins. Yuri insisted he was certain, though he was puzzled by the absence of clear indications. He began searching and suddenly noticed a small, shimmering object among the rocks. Excitedly, he called out to Gerard, urging him to help pull it out. Gerard asked Hernando for help, but Hernando hesitated, explaining that for a mage, hand injuries were a serious matter. Yuri reached down, uncovering a peculiar sword partially embedded in the earth, adorned with a glowing red gem. He pulled it out easily, slightly surprised by its shine and power. Hernando remarked that it looked incredibly new and didn't appear to have been buried long. Yuri examined the sword more closely and noticed a word engraved on it: guilty. The sight left him surprised, pondering its meaning. Gerard stepped closer, asking if the sword could be the founder's legacy. Yuri replied uncertainly that he didn't know. Suddenly, the ground around them shook violently. The three immediately took defensive stances, sensing imminent danger. Yuri smiled confidently, remarking that they were about to discover the truth very soon. The tremors intensified, and the ground began to crack dangerously beneath their feet. Without warning, all three fell into a massive chasm that opened beneath them, screaming as they plunged.